Welcome to City Inside Out, Council Edition. I'm your host, Brian Callanan. The city of Seattle is trying to tackle homelessness with a plan to add 1,000 units of shelter by the end of this year. But there's a new audit of the county's regional homelessness authority that's raising some new questions. Plus, there's some added scrutiny facing Seattle's Vision Zero traffic safety program after an alarming spike in pedestrian deaths. Councilmembers Lin and Rob Saka are discussing these issues and answering the questions you're sending in too, next on Council Edition.
We need to do a better job of bringing people indoors and then, importantly, surrounding them with wraparound services.
I have a lot of concerns about citing new mega data centers.
All that and more coming up next on City Inside Out, Council Edition. And glad to be with you once again on City Inside Out Council Edition here on the Seattle channel. I'm Brian Callanan, and with me this month I have two council members that are ready to talk about issues that affect you. First up, Councilmember Lin, representing District 2, which covers the south part of Seattle, Yesler Terrace to Rainier Beach. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me back.
Also with us, Councilmember Rob Saka, representing District 1 from South Park out to West Seattle, Georgetown over to Pioneer Square. Thank you for being here, too.
Thank you, Brian. Excited to be here with you.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about here. Some big stories unfolding. Even as we're recording the show, I want to start with the city's response to homelessness. And Councilmember Lin, let me begin with you. Mayor Wilson has called for 1,000 new units of shelter to house people who are homeless, which would include services by the end of the year. You sponsored some bills to help cut some of the red tape in that process. The council's also working on adding units at existing shelter sites. Is the city going to hit that number, 1,000 new units? Because I know council staff wasn't so sure about that. What's going on?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're going to hit that target number, but the important thing is to do as much as we can, as quickly as we can, while also being very mindful and thoughtful of how we're going to support the residents in these shelters, how we're going to make sure that they're well integrated into the neighborhoods, address any public safety concerns. So very supportive. There was nothing more important to me last year on the campaign trail, hearing from residents. I think we are all frustrated by our lack of progress. I'm excited that the mayor's office is taking a more hands-on, proactive approach. In the past, too often we sort of outsource this to our nonprofit providers. We also, outsourced it to a bit to the King County Regional Homeless Authority, and we're going to talk about that probably a little bit later. So I think we need to take ownership of this issue. I think the mayor's office is leading in that, and I'm excited to see that. And I think what is new is this approach of making sure that we have robust services on-site, security, that people can get mental health, substance use treatment. I think that that's really the key to making sure that this works, and we're going to have to make sure that we appropriately fund those services, and that's going to be the tricky part.
Absolutely, going into next year. I know there's been a lot of talk on the council about that. Councilmember Saka, I want to talk about a new shelter that I believe is set to open in your district, Glasyard Commons, West Marginal Way Southwest, near the First Avenue South Bridge. This site would have RV parking, tiny homes as well, with room for more than 100 people, along with 24/7 staffing. Is this project on track? What do you want to say to people in your district, maybe, who might be concerned about the impacts of this, public safety, et cetera?
Yeah, so first off, my understanding is the project is on track. I've been working now with two administrations to deliver this project, and it's very much needed.
Yeah, it's been around for a while, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes, so I would like to see this open up as soon as possible. Brian, you should know that my council district has the highest number of RV encampments and very high in tent encampments as well. Yep. And people want to see us do better for our unhoused neighbors. We need to do a better job of bringing people indoors and then, importantly, surrounding them with wraparound services to address the various behavioral health needs. And so I say that because my district is disproportionately impacted by the homelessness crisis that our entire region is suffering from, and I see this Glasyard site as a critical component of the broader solution to better address that. I'm really excited about the RV Safe Lot component, where folks have proper access to sanitation services, cleanup.
And the idea is to get them out of those RVs at some point too, right?
Yes, absolutely. But we need to start somewhere.
Okay.
And so I'm excited about the glass yard site. That said, I'm also mindful of some of the very valid concerns being expressed by some of the surrounding neighbors.
Sure.
We want to make sure as we welcome these new neighbors in, that are many of which are unhoused or unsheltered, that we're all living up to our community agreement to be good neighbors to each other. And part of that is, establishing good neighbor agreements, or whatever you want to call them,
Sure.
To make sure that there's a single point of contact where neighbors can call if they have challenges, issues, concerns, and address any local issues from that perspective.
Sure.
But,
okay.
yeah.
I know there's a lot still ahead with that, but it's going to be a lot of action the next couple of months here.
Absolutely.
For sure.
But I'm excited about it.
I'm interested to see what's next there. I want to talk about some news really developing as we speak with regard to the King County Regional Homelessness Authority. An audit commissioned by Seattle and King County found that the KCRHA lacks internal controls and oversight over its $205 million budget and lost track of at least $8 million in public funds. Councilmember Lin, I want to talk about this. The mayor has some issues about this. I know one of your colleagues, Councilmember Rivera, actually made this statement at a recent press conference.
The evaluation shows a pattern of mismanagement of funds that can no longer be tolerated. It is time to find a different way to make this very important work happen. Councilmember Dembowski and I will be issuing companion resolutions to officially call for the dissolution of KCRHA and a plan for the future that includes all of us, the city and the county, continuing to work together to find a better way.
The mayor has said that all options are on the table, but Councilmember Rivera clearly wants the KCRHA to be shut down. County Councilmember Rod Dembowski, too. Is it time to shut down the KCRHA?
I think we definitely have to, I agree, all options need to be on the table. I think we certainly need to understand what the role of the KCRHA is going forward. It's a very concerning audit report. Certainly want to hear KCRHA's response to the audit. But as I was saying earlier, I think it's critical that we as a city take a much more proactive role in this, that we take a more proactive role in citing locations, permitting. Really appreciate Councilmember Saka's leadership in saying, yes, we need more sites in my district. Mm-hmm. Too often, we have folks saying, not here, somewhere else, and we need folks stepping up to say, we need this here. And so I think there is a big question about what is KCRHA's role, especially as we take a more proactive response here. I also think, there was good intentions behind having a more regional collaborative approach. We need that. But I think the cynic in me says the KCRHA was set up to fail a bit, that we never gave them the powers that they needed. We never gave them independent financing tools. And so we kind of created this agency that was essentially kind of a pass-through administrator for our funds without any real tools to solve the problem. And so we certainly need to reimagine what their role is.
And what would happen to our homelessness response if it would be dismantled? What do you think?
Well, if it were shut down, the city would take on, reassume control of responding solely from a city perspective. There's inherent challenges and opportunities associated with that, but the underlying rationale and motives surrounding the establishment of the KCRHA was terrific. The problem we're seeing, and we see in various headlines, most recently the audit report, is that we haven't fully, that organization hasn't fully lived up to its intended goals for any number of challenges, and check the newspapers for dating back since its inception.
Right.
I am personally gravely concerned about the latest financial audit and findings and deficiencies noted in that audit report. I would like to see prompt, immediate action to address those findings. I'd like to see stronger, tighter financial controls. I'd like to see fast, quick, and appropriate remediation and mitigations in that regard. I'm not personally in a position to say at this stage that we should affirmatively and definitively shut down and abolish KCRHA. That said, I do think it is fair to say, at least from my perspective, the future of that organization is very fragile. One could say the organization is effectively on life support at this point, subject to making prompt repairs, what it's going to take, the transactional, operational costs, administrative costs of doing that, because the report expressly said to adequately fix this, it's going to be a very time and resource intensive effort.
Yeah.
When you layer that on top of the fact that their administrative costs are already escalating, rising, mounting through the roof, so we need to evaluate. I favor a more deliberative approach and finding what's going to take to make this right. But everything is on the table. All that is to say, everything is on the table from my perspective.
Councilmember Saka, back to you. Talking about audits, you're calling for one focused on our city's Vision Zero program, which aims to eliminate traffic deaths in the city by the year 2030. So there was a recent report on this that showed overall traffic fatalities fell between 2024 and 2025 from 31 to 27, but the number of pedestrians killed jumped from 10 to 18. Got an email on this from Britt, who writes this. It seems we spend a lot of Vision Zero money on education. Why not spend more of that money on road design? That would make roads safer for the most vulnerable users, pedestrians, bikers. That means curbs, Councilmember Saka. How do you respond to Britt's comment? How's an audit going to help out here?
Oh, I appreciate Brooke's comment. Shout out to Brooke.
Britt, yeah.
Britt,
yeah.
Shout out to Britt. And proud that we were able to save Kirby. Yes, we need curbs too.
Okay.
But in any event, to address the question, I'm calling for an audit because we are currently not on track to meet this very ambitious, laudable goal that we all want to see, the elimination of traffic deaths and serious injuries on our roads. And while, on the one hand, while we've made some great and encouraging progress, we're still way behind the 8 ball in terms of being in a better position to actually achieve this. Now, Brian, an audit is one of the most powerful accountability tools that we have at our disposal, certainly from a legislative perspective. And so that layered with other things, I'm confident will help make a difference. The intent there is and it's intentionally an outside audit.
Yeah.
SDOT
did its own.
Does its own independent reviews, and they should continue that great work. We also need an outsider's perspective.
Okay.
And so I've tabulated it up. Rough estimate, roughly just under $900 million that council wrote into the transportation levy that voters approved in 2024. Roughly almost half of the $1.5 billion 8-year levy was used for traffic safety investments, including, by the way, to the commenter's point, that covers road designs, because under our complete streets policy, every single time there's a major rehabilitation pavement project, the city sort of reimagines the use of that road and redesigns it and optimizes it for current and future uses and trends, which includes safety as an important factor. So we're spending a lot of money on, as we should, safety. I just want to see us. I'm not in the business of having these lofty, ambitious goals and not doing anything about it. Now, whether it's the 30 by 30 initiative for SPD female hiring, or this or any other goal. Why have a goal if you're not going to, set and enforce high standards and hold yourselves to the highest that standard?
Okay.
And that's what this is all about.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Lin, I'll throw another email your way about this topic. Kyle asks this. Do you have faith that SDOT will dramatically decrease crashes on Rainier, MLK, and Aurora by 2030? What about the rest of Seattle's high injury network? As you know, there are a lot of issues on Rainier and MLK in your district there. I'm thinking about the safety of that area. How do you respond to that question? I know the goal was to say 0 deaths by 2030. Is that going to happen?
Yeah, I'm certainly concerned that we are not on track. I think it's going to require electeds to lean into this issue, to insist that SDOT take very bold measures. Unfortunately, Their North Rainier is extremely dangerous, and we just opened up the Judkins Light Rail Station, and there's a lot of pedestrian issues with people trying to get through the on-ramps and off-ramps of I-90, and there was a reported death just recently from an accident, and last year I participated with a group that did a kind of like a funeral walking across the street at that location.
Remember that
and,
visual?
So for that to come true so quickly is pretty devastating. And our district has some of the most dangerous roads, I think Saka's district as well. And there's a few different things in terms of traffic safety. It is typically engineering, enforcement, and education.
Right.
Engineering is certainly the preferred route. We need to get people to slow down. We need to make sure that our roads are designed well with appropriate safety measures for pedestrians, for bicyclists, for everybody.
Yeah.
But we also have to look at the other things around enforcement and education. Even though enforcement's not a preferred option, that needs to be one of the tools in the tool belt. But most of all, we just need drivers to slow down. That is the number one reason why we see fatalities is, the faster you go, the more likely there's going to be that serious incident. So we need to do everything we can in that regard.
Thank you. Councilmember Lin, let me stick with you and talk about the comprehensive plan process that you're chairing. This is the roadmap, I should say, for how and where growth happens in Seattle. You actually hosted the first public meeting on Phase 2 of the comp plan a few weeks ago. Tell me about what you heard at that hearing, and what does Phase 2 really mean?
Yeah, that is a good question that I'm getting a lot because it's pretty confusing for folks, this whole comprehensive plan process. We've been going through it for years. We adopted the comprehensive plan last year, at the end of last year. We also adopted the zoning for our neighborhood residential areas, which is, used to be our single family areas, now they're neighborhood residential. We did not adopt zoning for the rest of the city. And so now we have to go through and adopt that zoning. And so I'm trying to come up with a good analogy, not sure if this quite does it, but it's almost like if you were painting a picture and you the comprehensive plan is the broad outline, now we're going back and filling in the details, right? And so, and again, we filled in those details for the neighborhood residential zones. Now we have to fill in the details for everywhere else. We're painting by numbers, yes. And we don't have to be super strict on the lines. There's a little bit of flexibility around those lines, but we are filling in the exact zoning sort of requirements, how tall you can build, setbacks, all those details which really matter. That's what we're doing for what's called centers and corridors. So this is along a lot of our, arterials, along our frequent transit routes, also a lot of the new neighborhood centers and other more dense areas. Those are the next phases of the comprehensive plan.
That was a pretty good breakdown. Thank you. I've been talking about that plan for a while. Councilmember Saka, another viewer email coming in your way about this topic. Lynn wants to know this. We desperately need housing and better transit everywhere. Will Councilmember Saka work with pro-neighborhood center groups, the mayor, and council members to find a way forward for the Alki neighborhood? Lynn wants to know about the Alki neighborhood in particular. Any thoughts about that and just how you're approaching this next phase of the process?
Yeah, excellent question. Shout out to Lynn. First off, that was an A+ summation of the Phase 2 process. Thank you,
the Transportation Committee chair saying that.
And I love the analogy of painting. In my head, I had this vision of Bob Ross just painting. We're over here, the Bob
Your
Ross.
hair's a lot shorter,
puffy little clouds and everything. But appreciate Lynn's question. During the Phase 1 portion, I met with everybody. I listened to everybody in neighborhood groups, people who were pro-housing, pro-density, pro-trees, pro-development, all the above and everywhere in between. And my office is already undertaking similar effort to make sure whatever policy decision I do make on the final Phase 2 legislation is going to be one that's 100% informed by community. With respect to the Alki Neighborhood Center, one reason why I did not support that last year, in addition to the whole procedural due process or lack thereof. This is essentially sprung upon communities the last minute. Meanwhile, others had years and many months at a bare minimum to plan and prepare and opportunity to provide feedback. It just did not meet the evaluation criteria that we use for determining neighborhood centers. Now, and one of those pertains to transit. I would like to see if the city policy direction is to create a new Elki community center, or excuse me, neighborhood center rather. I would love to see in parallel, and I'll be overseeing and shepherding this process from a council perspective during the upcoming potential renewal of the Seattle Transit Measure. Let's expand transit service out there. So we either revise the evaluation criteria or make it actually fit. And so one way we can do that is expand transit service, and I'm excited about that opportunity. But continuing to listen to stakeholders across the board.
Okay. Can I ask just briefly on what's happening with data centers in Seattle? Big headlines on this. I know a lot of people wrote, just about every council member out there. Some of these big tech companies are saying, yeah, we need to build data centers here. But there's been a lot of pushback about this. People worried about environmental concerns and things of this nature. What's going on?
Yeah, no, we have certainly, we're flooded with quite a few emails. There's a lot of concern, and a lot of it got triggered by some reporting that there was inquiries about, and these aren't just sort of your standard data centers. These were mega data centers, 50 megawatts and up. And
because the city has some smaller ones,
we absolutely
right?
do. We have quite a few small data centers. We have big tech. We have biotech. We have a lot of needs for data.
Sure.
But certainly, I have a lot of concerns about siting new mega data centers in our city. What we heard from all the reporting is that this would require enormous amounts of new energy sources. Besides, at least in other locations, data centers are consuming massive amounts of water. I'd be concerned about security issues. And so, typically, or not typically, but oftentimes when there's a proposal like this, it is a newer proposal. One tool that we have is a moratorium that buys us some time. So typically a moratorium would be like a 12-month moratorium, and you develop a work plan to study the issue. And it just allows council to have the time to understand the issue better, to put some guardrails around it. And so that's something we're looking into and something I would support. There was, just to mention that there were other council members that had already been looking into this for a few months. Councilmember Juarez, Council President Hollingsworth, they were already looking into it before sort of the firestorm. But it's certainly something that I think is warranted.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to try to fit in a big question about public safety if I can. And Councilmember Lin, you very recently held a public safety meeting in your district after some concerns about increased drug use, fires, safety issues in a number of Beacon Hill green spaces there. There's actually been some talk about temporarily closing Lewis Park near the Jose Rizal Bridge due to some illegal camping there. Can you give us an update on what's happening and the message you have for D2?
Yeah, no, North Beacon Hill, Little Saigon, and they are very interrelated. There's just the Jose Rizal Bridge there, but otherwise it's very similar activity on both sides of the bridge there. And North Beacon Hill has experienced a significant uptick in drug dealing and related fires, crime in the neighborhood, and we certainly have to get our handle around this. And it's a complex issue. It's obviously related to our homelessness issue, and I think what we are seeing with our unhoused population and similar hot spots for drug activity, for black market goods, is we are seeing a mix of needs around unhoused, mental health, drug addiction, and the mayor's office has spoken quite a bit about this, and I think we need to talk more about many of our unhoused neighbors are very vulnerable in terms of public safety. Who experiences some of the most public safety issues? It's our unhoused. They're preyed upon, and I think we need to deal with that reality that they are often taken advantage of by criminal elements, and so I believe we need to focus more on the folks that are coming in to take advantage or to take cover within, they might set up a tent and it's actually a drug dealing operation.
It's happened before.
Or an RV that might be nobody's living in the RV, it's just a drug dealing operation. And so I think we need to absolutely have increased enforcement on the drug dealing. We also need to deal with the black market just goods that are happening at 12th and Jackson that we can all see. So certainly look forward to working more with the mayor's office, city attorney, King County prosecutor. We need to have an all hands on deck approach. We need to include the care team to help us with our behavioral health. And this is why it's so important and why I'm so supportive of this proposal to expand our shelter with super robust mental health and drug addiction supports.
Hopefully will help in that area. Councilmember Saka, I'm going to try to squeeze this in.
Sure.
I read recently in the Seattle Times that City Parks is paying for private security overnight at Golden Garden Park over in Ballard there over the summer. You serve on the Parks Committee, and I know you've been trying to keep Alki Beach safer in your district, for example, too. Is it time to bring private security to more parks around our city, maybe West Seattle? What's going on with this?
Yes, it is time. And I would love to see an expansion of private security, either private security, so you're referring to the initiative by our Parks Department to hire private security. That would essentially be a second set of eyes, and if there's a public safety emergence that rises to the level of criminal activity or conduct, and then they would immediately call SPD. I would love to see that rolled out more broadly across the city, especially and including Alki and Harbor Avenue. Would also love to see additional SPD emphasis patrols and directed patrols in the area. Because of some efforts that we undertook a few years ago now, including some of these speed humps, we're seeing less problem speeding and racing. But the underlying activity in terms of excessive noise, partying, the trauma that has on impacted residents and neighbors is still completely out of hand and unacceptable, and I won't stand for it. Yes, we need those, and I've already been asking for them.
Okay, great. We do need to wrap up, and I do want to make sure we take a look at the latest viral video starring Councilmember Rob Saka.
Were you waiting for that ball to hit me? Well, guess what? I'm waiting for our Seattle Supersonics to come back. And as chair of our city's Sports and Experiences Committee, otherwise known as STEPS, I'm doing everything in my power to bring our Sonics back.
Councilmember Saka, pretty incredible video there. You sponsored a resolution to welcome the Sonics back recently. What's the latest? What's going on?
Well, the latest is we are well positioned as a city, from a City of Seattle government perspective, to win a Sonics bid. Ultimately, those decisions rests in the hands of third parties, private stakeholders, the league, prospective ownership groups. All we can do on the city side is ensure that our city-owned, operated, or co-owned operated facilities and the surrounding area is NBA ready, and proud to share that our Climate Pledge Arena is a world-class arena. Successfully hosts the Storm today. Why not the new Sonics?
Okay.
And I think a cherry on top to this would be, and we're currently exploring right now, a pathway to do that is to renovate and modernize the Seattle Center campus. I think the actual Climate Pledge Arena itself is ready, but
more of it, yeah.
Why not renovate and modernize and restore the vibrancy and the beauty of the Seattle Center in parallel? That would be the cherry on top.
That would be indeed.
Love to see that.
Councilmember Lin, just a quick check on this. Did that viral video, did it make you feel like you had a virus when you watched it, or what was your thought about it?
As viral as the video is, I actually have not seen it. I need to watch it.
Yeah. Tune in.
But super excited for the potential Sonics return. I think there's no better place to be as a professional sports team. No better fans for both men and women's sports.
Yep.
And super excited to see their return. Hopefully, we have some local high school basketball players. We got the award-winning Rainier Beach basketball team.
Right.
I'd love to see them in some Sonics gear.
That's great. Councilmember Lin, Councilmember Saka, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Council Edition.